So what are occupational standards? Occupational standards describe what a person in a particular occupation is able to do, what they know, and what they're capable of doing. Capable means having the skills, knowledge, and abilities to perform the job effectively. And the occupational standards that we're describing today, the ones developed for early childhood educators, were developed by ECEs across the country for use by you and by your peers. So why do we develop occupational standards? They're a very valuable tool, and they are based on competencies that describe exactly what an early childhood educator must be able to do in their job. Occupational standards can be used in any number of ways by a variety of audiences in the early childhood and care sector, including government decision makers, early childhood education and curriculum developers, directors of early childhood education centers, as well as frontline early childhood educators. A how-to guide was developed to promote the occupational standards for early childhood educators. They're meant for discussions and to stimulate those discussions between frontline ECEs and directors of early childhood education centers. These are only examples that we're going to present today. They're not best practices on how to develop the tools from occupational standards, but they are 5 very specific ways on how you can use the occupational standards in your setting. We encourage you to read through the how-to guide and the occupational standards and develop your own uses for the occupational standards. The third use of the occupational standards for early childhood educators involves informing and assessing early childhood post-secondary education programs using those occupational standards. Because the occupational standards for early childhood educators give a current snapshot of what that ECE must be able to do, it can be an excellent resource that can be used by curriculum developers and institution faculty as well to inform and assess post-secondary ECE programs. There's a number of different methods that can be used to do this task. The how-to guide describes exactly how the occupational standards can be used to inform these processes. The occupational standards can be used as a resource by curriculum developers and faculty throughout the program review phase. They can serve as one of the many reference documents that they use as they go through their program reviews and their curriculum reviews. And following the initial development of an ECE program, they can evaluate that program using the occupational standards to determine if the skills, knowledge, and abilities that are captured in the standards are covered by their programs. If an early childhood education curriculum developer or faculty member is responsible for developing a short course or some kind of addendum course for their existing curriculum, the occupational standards can be used as a very valuable resource to identify the skills, knowledge, and abilities required of students in that course. Although curriculum development is a very difficult task and one that requires a number of resources and inputs from various audiences, the occupational standards are just one resource that can be used because they are very valuable and give a current snapshot, as I mentioned, of what's currently happening within the occupation. An organization may use the occupational standards to inform a consultant or an outside expert to give them an idea of what the minimum skills are and abilities that could be included in an early childhood education program and what kind of resources or training resources may be required in that program as well. Another way that the occupational standards for early childhood educators can be used is to assess existing early childhood education programs. Although every province and post-secondary educational institution have an ongoing and a regular curriculum review and program review process, they can be very prescriptive and be very specific as to how they're done. However, they could use the early childhood education occupational standards as a resource to help review those programs to make sure there are no major gaps between skills that are in the programs. And there are numerous methods and resources that can be used to facilitate the curriculum development, and the occupational standards for early childhood educators can be considered a very useful resource to come up with those programs. So another potential use for the occupational standards for early childhood educators is to inform the curriculum assessment process. During full program reviews, the person responsible for the review can use the occupational standards for early childhood educators to make sure their programs cover all the tasks and subtasks, and especially those that are considered new tasks or emerging trends within the occupation, to make sure that those are covered off within the curriculum. And also you can compare training curriculum to the relevant sections of the occupational standards to ensure the programs are meeting or exceeding the identified skills, knowledge, and abilities within the standards. It allows a look at the courses within the early childhood education program and align those with the tasks and subtasks of the occupational standard. It allows a method of benchmarking the curriculum to see if it meets the current needs, as the occupational standards do describe a current snapshot of early childhood educators' work right now.